like I said, welcome everybody to Redeem Saturday School. Very happy to have everybody on. Thanks so much for joining us. We're joined here by a very special guest, Mr. AJ Armstrong, who will introduce himself in a moment. I am working to get my screen all shared up so that way I can show you what some of these things are that I want to share before he starts to speak. But I may not be able to do that because of some technical difficulties, and that's okay. So we'll adjust and overcome. So the name of my company is called Redeem Investments. We are a real estate investment firm that specializes in really two food groups within commercial real estate. One is value add apartment buildings that we acquire, force appreciation, and increase the value. At the end of that time period, we'll either do a refinance or exit the property and return capital to our investors. The second food group is land development, specifically for renewable energy projects, which is very exciting, and a lot of things going on in that space. In fact, I was visiting some potential sites and one of our off-takers or customers in Virginia yesterday, and a lot of opportunity. And it's just, but we're calling it the riding the green wave, and that has a double meaning because there's some economics involved there as well, but also because of the clean energy component of that. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a licensed investment advisor, not an accountant. All the information that we share here really is for informational purposes, educational purposes only. And so anything that you see or learn here really is for that, to that end. Again, you're not seeing some of this because I'm not able to share my screen, but within Redeem Investments, we have really three arms, if you will. Redeem Realty Solutions, which is our residential stuff, Redeem Commercial Real Estate, which I just talked about, and then Redeem Renewable Energy. And we're doing those within the context of a fund. And so we actually just closed on the first round of our renewable energy fund that we launched a couple of months back. And so we're getting started on a lot of the work that's involved with building utility scale solar farms. Our next step as far as investment funds are concerned is the launch of our commercial real estate fund, taking place hopefully here in Q1. We've got a couple of deals lined up that will be just in time for us. So very excited about that. And then just a really quick shameless plug about the Mastermind that we have and we host. For those that are interested in that, really the forum for this monthly webinar that we do is designed for our Mastermind members and to create content and provide education to help them grow along their journey of wanting to become what we are now, which are sponsors and general partners for investment funds as well as syndications. And so the design of masterminds can vary. The way that we've structured our mastermind really is a joint venture partnership program. So it is ideal for those who are aspiring to be a general partner or a sponsor at some point within the commercial real estate space. Provides them with access to various resources, to training, meetings and events like the one that we're hosting now. We do limit it to a smaller group, so 50 really is the max. We still have some room for those who might be interested, but just to give you a flavor for who our members are, we've got I think 6 or 7 West Point grads. We've got one squid, so beat Navy, good friend of mine, and actually we have a second, although not a Naval Academy grad. He is a special warfare, so excited to have him part of our group. We have apartment syndicators, single family home real estate investors. We have an orthopedic surgeon who's part of our group, retired Air Force NCO, various types of experiences that really comprise the membership of our group right now. We have a blockchain expert. For those who might be interested in participating in that, you can just go to our website, redeeminvestments.com, or send an email to info@redeeminvestments.com. And again, just as a reminder, it really is for those people who are willing to learn, to grow, contribute, hold themselves accountable, as well as others for our journey or their journey to becoming a general partner in some of these deals. Not really for sort of the average person who wants to simply be a limited partner. I think one really neat, interesting feature that is really cool is that the membership fee that we charge our members goes towards being credited to a limited partner position in one of our deals. So there's really no risk at all. And so other programs really vary in that there might be sort of a sunk cost. Ours really goes towards contributing towards a limited partner position. So again, for anybody who's interested in that, there's a lot of events that we've done this year. I won't go through all of them. If my slides actually end up going out at some point, you'll see them. And I won't waste time going through some of the other things that I had prepared to share that I'm unable to show right now. I think we'll just cut to the chase and really introduce my friend and someone who I'm honored to have on today, Mr. AJ Armstrong. It's funny story of how we met. He and I were both asked to be speakers at a real estate conference, a real estate seminar designed for West Point graduates. And he and I are both alumni there. And he in the order of the schedule, he went before I did. And let's just say at the end of it, everybody was standing up clapping, just in awe of this guy who just got everybody inspired and motivated. Here I was supposed to come on and talk about investing in apartments, and I had no idea how I was going to follow that. But over the course of that, I think it's been over 2 years now. It's just really been interesting to see our friendship grow and just continue to overlap in terms of different things that we're doing. He's an engineer, investor, a thought leader. He's been featured in several mainstream media platforms on topics such as leadership, technology. Played football at Army, so I know he's especially pumped to watch the beatdown take place of Navy today. He's founded 3 businesses, a host of a really cool podcast that I had the privilege of being on myself, Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. And so happy to have you on, Mr. AJ Armstrong. I will turn it over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Christian. Thanks for taking your time today, folks, for checking this out. I think this is really tells a lot about a person when they decide to invest in themselves, especially on the weekend. I always tell my wife, I was like, you're a high school athlete, and then you never have evenings or weekends, and all of a sudden you're in college, you go to West Point, you never have evenings or weekends, and then you get in the Army, you never have evenings or weekends, and finally you're a civilian and you get evenings and weekends, and then it's like you're just feeling like I got to fill this void up with something else, and that's kind of how I got into trouble with doing all this real estate stuff and starting businesses and whatnot. So it's an absolute privilege to be on, Christian, and I really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your Saturday morning today. I guess a little background on me. So I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin, Neenah, Wisconsin, and it's known for the manhole covers. If you ever go around and you check out the street and you see a manhole cover on the ground. Now, I was a football player in high school, and that's what allowed me to get into West Point. So I started in 2010 at the prep school, and we graduated prep school 2011. I went to the academy and graduated the academy 2015 with a degree in systems engineering. I commissioned into air defense artillery, where I was a Patriot missile officer down at Fort Bliss, Texas. About 18 months into my service commitment, I had a knee injury that was a medical disqualifier. So I was medically honorably discharged, and I had to figure out my life, so to speak. So I started, when you're in college, you got stuff going on. You don't actually read for pleasure. And I had met a guy who was really wealthy. He was in the furniture business down in Fort Bliss. And I said, how do I, build wealth and become like you? And he said, well, you should start reading about people that are also wealthy. And it just clicked for me. I said, all the things my teachers told me in elementary school and all the things my professors told me at the academy was about reading. And I just decided not to do it. And here this guy is, real success story, multimillionaire in the furniture business. And he had bought a lot of his furniture overseas and shipped it over here to get great deals and things like that. And he said, you got to read biographies about successful people. So that's what I did. I started reading voraciously all the time. And what I started to figure out was that a lot of people building serious amounts of wealth, I'm talking about decimillion, type levels of net worth, 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars were tied to real estate in some way. So I wanted to figure out how this worked. And it came to understanding the balance sheet, which was how can we move assets and liabilities in such a clever way to build net worth and scale it with leverage. So in 2016, I moved back home to an area just short of Neenah, Wisconsin, called Oshkosh, Wisconsin, where I got a job with a defense contractor known as Oshkosh Defense. And they're known for making tactical wheeled vehicles for the United States Army and Marine Corps. And that's kind of the big defense contractor in the area. So I was working as a systems engineer, and it was one of those salaries that they said, what do you want to make? And I just threw out some stupid number to say, if you're going to get me to come to Wisconsin in the winter, it's going to have to be this kind of number. And they said, yeah, no problem. And that was where I said, okay, this isn't a bad deal. And I went to, I started doing this real estate thing. I found the biggest buildings I could find in town. And I looked at the parcel record from the city to see who owned those buildings. And I started to find out that this town of Oshkosh was kind of like Game of Thrones, where there was about 5 families that seemed to run this city, and they were all tied into massive amounts of real estate wealth. So I said, well, what if I just, called up some of these folks and got to know them a little bit and started talking about, I'm a West Point kid just trying to figure out my life. And that's where I started to build some cool mentors in the community by finding the different names of some of these wealthy real estate investors. And they taught me a lot of these different strategies for, leveraging multifamily, buying single family, doing flips, doing wholesales and things like that. And one of them told me to go to they said, look for the signs on the side of the road that say, we buy houses. Call them up and just, talk to them a little bit. And I said, okay. So I saw a couple signs that said, we buy houses. And I called one of them and they said, come to this thing. It's called the Wisco RIA. It's a real estate investment association in our local town. And we have different, investors of all kinds. And I didn't realize that those shows on HGTV and things were actually a thing, right? That the people out there actually walked around and they looked at houses and said, we could redo the kitchen and make real money. Well, I met a lot of those folks at the Wisco RIA. And one of them was the name of Jason Lund, he's really a bulldog kind of guy, brash personality, no BS, but he is a great house flipper, one of the number one house flippers in our area. And this was whatever it was 5 years ago, and he's only grown since then. Now he's done pretty well for himself. And I started asking all these questions. How can you really do this wholesaling thing? You're telling me that you can you can put something under contract, and then you can resell the contract for more money in 30 days without putting anything down? That's impossible. And I've got this engineer brain. He's sitting there like, well, yeah, you can do that, and this is how we do it all the time. And I said, well, I don't understand. Why wouldn't you just list it on the MLS or be a realtor? He said, well, all it takes is, one or two that you got to find that someone decided they didn't want to go with a realtor to save on commission costs. They want to close fast and they want to use cash. And there's a serious niche in the market for those types of people. I said, I could not believe this for a second. And then finally, he just looked at me. He says, don't be a little beta and just go do it. And I said, wow. So that became one of the speeches that I gave was always, don't be a little beta, because it's like sometimes it just takes just go try it and figure it out and see if you could do this. And that's where my wife and I decided we were going to try wholesaling for a while. So we did wholesaling probably about 6 months. We had mixed success. We had some wins, some losses, some embarrassing moments where you didn't go through with the deal, and it was just kind of weird and goofy. But what that taught us was how to find off-market deals with strategic marketing campaigns. So regardless of we didn't make a lot of money wholesaling. We made some, but we didn't make a lot. And what that taught us was you can use these off-market direct mailing campaigns, clever marketing strategies, how to sift through parcel records, data, all this different stuff to find deals. Meanwhile, I'm working as an engineer, and I got this big salary, this corporate life, right? So Jason, he says, you're an engineer, you're probably making what? And I told him, this is good money. And he said, you know how long that takes me to do flipping houses? And I said, I don't know. I just looked at HGTV where they got the 120,000 flips every now and then. He's like, that's not how it works. He's like, it takes me a long time to build that up. He said, use that cash flow to get great financing terms and to, leverage your existing, wealth building strategy. So that's what I started to do. So what we did was we used the wholesaling marketing strategy to find off market deals, use my career, my income to get great financing terms. And the banks just look at, oh, wow, number one defense contractor in the state, you work there. I mean, that's the cushiest deal we could get with its great financing terms. So they were able to get really good deals. He said, go to a local bank, because the national banks are going to run you through the ringer. They're going to have guidelines. They're going to have this or that. You're going to be talking to some, new college grad that's got a textbook of this thick of how to qualify an investor. So I go to a local bank. Well, it turns out to this day now, this local bank that I use, 5 people are on the board to approve the loans, and I know all of them. And so when they see my information come through, it's just, kind of a given that I'm going to get approved. And they do a lot more aggressive deals and things like that. So I started to learn a lot about just kind of this real estate market. And I was working full time. I wasn't doing real estate full time. And I had learned a lot of strategies from buying multifamily properties. Now, one of the properties we bought was Marissa's Fit Boutique, which is where my wife, she was doing the wholesaling. And I'm like, you're not a wholesaler, Marissa. You go back to personal training, which is your passion and what you love. So we bought an old barbershop, we rehabbed it, rented out the top, made the downstairs a fitness center. I remember walking to the realtor that day, and we said to him, he's like, "Oh, so what are you, a hairstylist or something?" He's looking at my wife. I'm like, "No, no, it's gonna be a personal training gym." He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, whatever it takes to get a sale, I guess." He just could not see the vision, and after we ripped it out, now people don't even know what that thing that used to be a
Right.
barbershop anymore. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so that got us into the real estate game, and I've always called myself a casual real estate investor. I wait very patiently for my marketing campaigns to kick back a golden nugget. I'm not really looking to do this to build cash flow. I'm looking to do this to build wealth. I rely on lots of other streams of income for cash flow to pay my bills day to day. I'm using real estate to build massive amounts of wealth. So I'm waiting to find a gem here and there. And that's what I started to do. So it was 2019. We met at the Black and Gold Summit. And I had just started to kind of divest my real estate portfolio because I was getting sick of dealing with tenants. There's a lot of problems I started to have. And in 2020, I go to the Black and Gold, and I didn't really have anything to talk about for real estate. I'm sitting there like, well, I didn't really do anything the last year. I didn't buy anything. I didn't really have any huge wins. And everyone there is talking about these awesome real estate stories and all this cool stuff. I'm just sitting there kicking myself like, it's middle of the pandemic. It's this goofy market where housing and rental properties are just through the roof, and we don't know if commercial real estate's ever going to be a thing again. And I'm like, I got to do something. I get all fired up. I'm driving back, and my speech that we did in 2019, as I told the story about Todd Beamer, who was the passenger on 9/11 that took the plane down, and his last words were "Let's roll," that he was ever recorded saying.
Right.
And I remember Brian had made bracelets for the 2020 Black and Gold from that quote that said "Let's roll" on it. And I'm wearing this bracelet driving back from Colorado. And I'm sitting there looking at it. And it just says "Let's roll" on it. And I just said, I got to do something. So I was walking past this office building for like months that was right next door to where I live. I'm telling you, 100 feet. And I'm sitting there. It's 7,500 square feet of office, and it's sat for 5 years. And it's the middle of the pandemic. Everybody's working remote. Office space is dead. Bloomberg, Forbes, everything. Office space is dead. Everyone's going remote. Boom, boom, boom. And that's what the owner thought too. He said office is dead, so his price was just crashing for what he wants. So I started to negotiate with the guy a little bit, and before you know it, I had under contract a 7,500 square foot office space in our market for $260,000. And what I did was I said, well, office space in its traditional sense might be dead, it might not be. So I want to structure this to where I have the most amount of upside versus the least amount of downside. So I'll share this case study with you. And this is what eventually turned into this thing you see on the back, the venture project. And I'll
I
break
know.
down some.
I'm glad that you're sharing that because that is one of the things that I wanted you to talk about there is the venture project. There's so many things I think that you've done that really help set the tone and the pace for what I know that folks that sort of follow us and that are part of our group aspire to do and aspire to be. And so I think as you prepare to talk about that, really, if you can kind of talk and outline in a way of how people can think about 2022 and sort of follow your footsteps, that would be very, very helpful.
100%. So let me see if I can pull up. Um, Here, I'll just share my screen and see if that works first. Or is it not letting me? Maybe it's giving me the same issue you had. There's the share feature looks like it's turned off, but I can talk through it if we need to also.
Keep
Oh,
keep
wait.
chatting. Let me see if I can
There we
close
go. I got it now, I think.
it. Okay,
All right. So you should see my full screen here. Um,
there we go.
all right. So this is a case study, and I had heard about the lease option strategy for investing a long time ago, and I never really saw a real situation that this would make sense. I do have a little disclaimer on here that this is not to pitch investors. This is for educational purposes, and these numbers are estimated the best I can based off of my internal financial accounting processes. But the venture project was my idea to envision how office space could be used during the pandemic. And this is kind of how the process went. So, we all learn in business 101, the risk versus reward is supposed to look like this. It's equal amounts of risk equals reward, and it's supposed to be directly proportional. And I remember reading a book. It was called Principles by Ray Dalio. And Ray Dalio is a very famous billionaire who created the company Bridgewater, which was a large hedge fund. And his investment strategy was to find opportunities with asymmetric risk versus reward. So you're looking for the most amount of potential upside with the least amount of downside. So the first limiting belief that has to be removed is that these are always proportional to each other, because in fact they're not. And I saw this venture project deal as something that had the potential to have a very high upside with a low downside. And with that came the lease option structure for the deal. So this is the definition of a lease option. It's an agreement that gives the renter a choice to purchase the rental property during or at the end of the rental period. And it precludes the owner from offering the property for sale to anybody else. So when the term expires, the renter must either exercise the option or forfeit it. And a lease option is also known as a lease with an option to purchase. So what I did in this venture project scenario was I said there's 7,500 square feet of office. What my plan was to do was I had a lot of stuff going on. I had these different businesses. Had a podcast going on. I had done some freelance consulting work for small business owners and startups. So I wanted to create a little startup community in Oshkosh where we could have local entrepreneurs come in and use shared office space in a co-working fashion. So we're going to lease desks, lease like shared desk space, lease offices individually instead of just find a massive tenant to fill the 7,500 square feet. Clearly, that strategy wasn't working out for the previous owner. So my strategy was to go on a micro scale, increase the amount of management that I was going to have to put in the property, but so increase the amount of management that I was going to have to put in the property, but also increase the amount of potential profit. So it wouldn't exactly be your normal passive commercial strategy. So this was the idea. The venture project, it was going to be branded by my company, Armstrong Ventures. And this was the executive summary because Armstrong Ventures was my freelance consulting business I was doing completely online. This was going to build a co-working space that would do two things. Number one, the co-working space would profit and make the real estate deal profitable. Number two, it would provide a pipeline of entrepreneurs into my consulting practice and it would act as a funnel. So I pitched this. I started writing up this strategy as one of our final capstone projects in my MBA. And I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea or whatever. And then the professor gave me a 99.8% on the project. So I said, okay, I should probably do this.
Yeah.
So we decided to go through with the project. And feel free to, if Christian, if you want me to stop and clarify anything too, feel free to cut me off and we can dig into the numbers a little bit more and some of the other pieces of it. But this was the original plan was that I think with 50 grand out of my pocket, I could expect about a 22% IRR over the next 5 years with a 12% discount rate. So that was in the original plan. So this was the building, Schmidt Title and Escrow. It's a second floor of this building in a condo parcel. 7,500 square feet of office. You can tell it's got a nice exterior facade. And it's right in the downtown area of our area, which is about 70,000 people. But there's also neighboring communities in the whole metropolitan area, something about 330,000 people. So you can get an idea of the population of the town. So this is the little downtown that's just like a Midwestern quirky downtown you could probably expect from anywhere. So this is how we did it. So the lease was going to be a lease option for 3 years, where I was going to pay around $2,000 a month in a lease, where I could sublet this out to people. So keeping in mind the asymmetric risk versus reward, if I decided I was going, if I could not lease this out to people, the co-working space flops on its face. My lease runs out 3 years later. I just am out the $24,000 over 3 years or whatever the number comes out to be. If the opportunity seems to be where I get a lot of good tenants in here and I start to cash flow very positively, I've got a locked in purchase price at $260,000. Now, we'll get into some of what that value is today and things like that, but I can play this video if you want to check out kind of the starting point.
Let's see it, man.
Can you hear it too?
No.
Okay. Doesn't matter. You can just check it out a little bit. But this was just cubicles and weird things going on. And we just come into this and you could see it's really dated and strange looking. And we were just trying to do a lot of this work ourselves to save as much money as possible. So this is supposed to be a testimony to other entrepreneurs as well, that you can do this stuff on a budget. And we found the entire space had hardwood floors underneath. That room that you just saw is the podcast room I'm in right now. This is my office today, this room that you're going through, and it's very dated and bizarre. And you'll start to see that as we started to transform this space, whoops, we started to pick. I started to pick things based on what would add value from a commercial standpoint. So in like traditional residential investments, your kitchen, bathrooms, those are the things that add value. That doesn't necessarily add value to commercial property all the time, and especially in office space. So this was an exact expense breakdown. So I told you I had budgeted $50,000 to do this rehab. And you can see most of the stuff isn't even rehab work. It's mostly like operational things for the co-working space, like things like moving the cubicles around, painting floors. It's not a heavy amount of work.
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting was, because this is a commercial project, I put 40,000 out of my pocket into this. But then we applied for different grants because of the economic development incentives that come from the state, because entrepreneurship is obviously a very attractive thing for government. So we ended up improving or making about 50,000 in grants that we qualified for. And that ended up, so actually we actually ended up like profiting something like $9,000 though. Wrong button.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up making money.
So far, what I'm hearing you say is you're describing this story, which I think really the best way people learn is through stories. And so I appreciate you talking through this. Is first of all sort of what your trajectory was, and the fact that you got to know certain people. So network is always going to be key. Developing relationships and really getting close to people who, even though you yourself may not know how to do certain things or may not have the expertise, you surround yourself with other people, and sort of through osmosis and exposure, you gain and gather knowledge, right? And then secondly to that, you can then, and I don't know to what degree you were able to sort of leverage this, but the relationships that you have and their relationships sort of help to further and advance some of the things that you're wanting to do from a business perspective, or personal or charitable contributions, or anything that you aspire to want to pursue. If you find alignment with these people, it sort of helps become more of a symbiotic type of a relationship. So that's one component. And then the next phase of that really is looking for opportunities. And this one just came about because you actually had your eyes open, because you had learned some things along the way. You knew what to look for. And so when the opportunity presented itself, you knew to strike. And then lastly, I think, again, as you're showing this breakdown, one of the takeaways for me so far is, yes, there's a potential capital outlay, but there's also additional opportunities to gain support through incentives like you're describing here. I mean, I don't think I've had a chance to share with you, AJ, but just Wednesday of this week, we went under contract ourselves on the acquisition of a 10-story office building in a town called Temple, just an hour north of us. And similar to your approach, we're looking to pivot that and reposition it to its highest and best use. Right now, it's a bank building with a lot of office condos. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the first 2 floors, keep it as a retail. The 3rd floor will be, half of it will be a restaurant with a rooftop deck. So it'll be really cool and hip. And then the other half of it will be some type of an amenity for the residents, potentially a co-working space like you're describing. And then floors 4 through 10 will all be residential, specifically designed for corporate housing or short-term rentals. So I won't go through all the numbers, but let's just say that the purchase price that we're buying it for, the end value should be about 5 times that amount. And so it's going to be very exciting to see that come alive. But anyway, yeah, I love what you're doing. Tell us more, and then definitely provide some gems to other folks to follow in your footsteps.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and I think you nailed it too, with the idea of the like we hear about in negotiating or things like that, that you're looking for win-win opportunities, but there's so much to that. It's about, Zig Ziglar said, You'll make more money helping other people get what they want, than you trying to get what you want." And I think that there's there's a level of hearing that and hearing those words and saying, "Oh, that makes sense." And then there's a level of understanding that and really trying. I mean, I worked with the Economic Development Center and says, "What do you want in this area?" And they said, "We want these industries moving into this area." So we created incentives for entrepreneurs to come to the area. University of Wisconsin state school system. They said, "We want this in the entrepreneurship area." And by offering all those services in the venture project umbrella, we were able to get these different grant organizations. Now, these grants also can continue. So, like, for example, the University of Wisconsin Systems Grant, that has the opportunity of $2 million of grant money coming to a for-profit business to run entrepreneurship programs. Something I never would have thought of, but because I was trying to partner with these community partners and figure out how do we actually make entrepreneurship a thing in this area, I was able to feed their initiative with my initiative and had complementing interests. But I had to be very interested in what they wanted to actually accomplish to be able to do that. So there's a level of hearing win-win and hearing help other people get where they want to go. And then there's a level of understanding it and internalizing it and saying, okay, here's where I'm going with my business and how our missions complement each other.
Well, yeah, and I think that as I'm hearing you say that, I mean, the third phase of that may be sort of the application piece, right? You know, really acknowledging it, understanding it, and then actually doing something with it. So that's great.
So this is a walkthrough I did when I did this presentation a while ago. It's a little different now. The studio has been upgraded since then, but you can tell it's much different. And
There's sound panels on the wall.
yeah, so full sound. This room that I'm in right now is completely soundproof. This room you're looking at was just used for storage. In fact, the realtor didn't even consider this being a usable space. That room we just walked through. This is now convert. This had cubicles and flooring and carpet floor in it. Now it's a lounge area. I kept the same furniture. This was probably $100,000 worth of furniture. I just kept it, reorganized it, hired some movers, $1,800, and they came and broke it down and replaced it different places. Funny enough, these countertops are actually wallpaper that I put over the top of the countertops, and those tiles are sticky adhesive tiles.
That's
And
one way to resurface it.
yeah, nobody will ever look at that. Nobody uses those countertops. They just look at them. So you can see the office to the left. That's my office now.
Yes. Love that. It's
We
awesome.
kept the same vibe going with the look, and all these side rooms became rented. So this was it's a lot different, and this was, like I said, with less than $40,000 budget. And you can see that. So people would walk in here and say, "Wow, this is going to be $250,000 worth of work," and it's because I cleverly decided where we were going to put, some of this money. Um, and that was kind of how it works. So the valuation came out to be something like this. So this is our monthly expenses. This was the renting potential. So you can see I broke it down into the offices where I charge 500, cubicles I charge 200, and then these startup memberships were like floating desks you can have. The podcast rental room, this is actually way higher today, this amount that I get for the podcast room. And then this is the potential. I can't see the number right here. Oh, there it is. So this is the total $7,000, and I think I can add offices too by doing a build out. So there's the potential to have $10,000 of monthly income on this.
Nice. Very
So
nice.
I don't know.
So those are of the capacity that's available. How much? What is the occupancy? I guess at this point.
Yeah, so the occupancy right now we're about 67, 68.
Okay,
So whatever that comes out, there's way more startups today um, than this shows. There's fewer cubicles that are being rented.
I see.
So it's about what this conservative number is. So what I did is I kind of broke down to show some potential. There's some conservative profit, and then there's the cap rate. So there could be a potential exit right here of $170,000 of profit because I could sell for $430,000 based off this valuation. Now there's like the current, if you go into appraisal and go exclusively off of square footage, this 430,000 number today is something like 515. So you could go off of just square footage evaluation. And let's say I do the office build out and I get closer to this $10,000 of net. We can push this probably somewhere north of $780,000 for more optimistic profit. So we're looking at an exit with a profit potential of something somewhere between 170 to $500,000 based off of really zero money that I put into it when you consider the grant. So I fronted 40 grand, got paid back in grants,
Right.
and then the profit upside of this optimistically would be something like 500,000. So that's a pretty clever deal you can see by maximizing the upside and doing the downside. So um, this is a couple reasons why I'm not selling it yet, is because of the venture capital model, where I want to keep a pipeline of startups coming in so that I can hopefully get some of the upside. Brian actually forwarded me this Catalyst Campus when I was explaining this to him. And this is a company that they were able to sell their co-working campus for $300 million because of some different startups that were part of their community. And then you get an equity piece of some of the startups. So I'm kind of playing the long game, hoping that I can hold out for something like that.
Great, good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I really like the model. Anything that provides cash flow, and I know you said in the beginning that you're doing the real estate piece really to build massive wealth, which I definitely applaud, and that's also, actually what I'm trying to do as well. But in the course of doing that, the types of investments that we're looking to secure are exactly what you're talking about, are the ones that do produce cash flow as you're building that wealth. And so, I'm looking at, for example, this commercial real estate fund that I mentioned early on. Part of what we'll do will be, value add apartment buildings, but we may also, recapitalize this 10-story building that I mentioned once it's stabilized, and bring it into the fund so that it's producing cash flow for our investors. We're also looking at ground leases. I mean, I was in Virginia yesterday, and it just was really, really interesting that the evolution, not the evolution, the progression of the conversation that we had. And what I mean by that is we were there primarily to talk about their needs for utility scale renewable energy. And we ultimately got to the point where we were looking at and doing a tour of the campus, looking at different rooftops of where they could place non-utility scale, but solar panels and things nonetheless that would be visible from an aesthetic standpoint that really doesn't fully satisfy their energy needs, because that's what really they need the solar farm for. But aesthetically and for purposes of wanting to showcase their support of the clean energy movement, they wanted to have some things on site. Well, in the course of doing this tour of campus, they pointed out different properties, residential properties that were really on commercial land, that they were encountering some opposition, both internally and externally, in terms of being able to acquire those. Well, that led to a conversation about public-private partnerships where they could bring myself and my team in to acquire the land and then lease it to them at a fair and reasonable price that would then enable them to have control over that land, to build on it, do whatever they want. Meanwhile, I don't have to manage the operations. We're just getting a check that I'm giving to my investors, right? And so all these things are very fascinating to me, and there's so many different ways to make money in real estate. And just very excited to hear about your things, and and I'm excited to bring other people on board who are just finding out about us. We've had people join our mastermind here as of late who are eager to partner on these projects that we're getting under contract and that we're pursuing. And so, it's just an exciting time. And 2022, I think, is going to be a big year. And so learning from someone like you about how to position themselves well is really key. So, yeah, exciting stuff here.
I think, and you can do it like with a kind of a snowball method. So that's my default strategy for really any entrepreneurs that kind of come to the space, is how do you start small with what you've got? You think you need to bring a large amount of capital forward to do X amount of thing. I get people in here who want $1 million of seed money all the time for different ideas and ventures. And I'm like, you guys could do this for, $1,500 if you were smart and clever. Because as a small business owner, the whole name of the game is you have such a small pot of money all the time. And you've got to be able to really strategically take little tiny pieces of that small pot, make them even smaller, and see exponential growth compound again and again and again to try to build wealth. It's a very difficult strategy. So knowing how every little thing that you buy is low and every single thing that you buy is high and everything you sell is high is kind of the name of the game. Where these microphones were actually surplus from Shure manufacturing facility in China that I bought off of Alibaba. These are normally $400 microphones on Amazon.com, and I got these microphones for $190. So I could sell these microphones and still profit if the podcast room busts. Every single thing that I bought, this table that I'm on right now, was free from a company that was getting rid of office furniture, brand new, next door, because they were upgrading everything. Like every single thing is like that. And I think that there's so much opportunity in real estate and in business to just apply that everywhere you go. Is how am I getting the best deal on every single tiny itty bitty decision, because that compounds so quickly in the grand scheme of things.
No, that's great. Yeah, I heard the term here recently. Think big and but start small, right? And I do like that idea of having, first of all, having a vision. And I think that's really where goal setting begins. Is like nobody can force you to have a vision for what you want things to be. That sort of needs to be kind of internal and intrinsic. But once you have that, then you sort of need to do the whole army backwards planning approach, and develop a roadmap and a plan to achieve that. Because I think, as we know, if you don't have a plan, then you're bound not to get to the goal that you want to achieve. So fail to plan to fail, right? But yeah, no, that's good stuff. And I should have said this earlier, but for anybody who has a specific question for myself or AJ, please add those to the Q&A box here. AJ, so any other thoughts or ideas of how people, in addition to what you just shared in terms of just being clever and creative, starting small, what else would you say as far as how someone might be looking to either get into real estate or business in the coming year? I myself, for example, have had the good fortune here of being able to transition from my W-2 job within the last 6 weeks, and so far so good. And you mentioned wholesaling. Even though I'm really not paying, what we're doing primarily is the commercial real estate and the renewable energy. Really not doing much in residential real estate at this point, other than things that kind of come and fall into our lap. And surprisingly, in large part, I think because of God's blessing, I think my personal income from the residential stuff probably is equivalent to what my W-2 income was for this last year, without really doing much to it. And so I'm thankful for that. But then, as we look at commercial real estate and renewable energy, that's really going to be the fuel for taking care of our things personally from a financial standpoint, but then also being able to kind of enable our business to grow and really take care of our investors. So any other thoughts or points that someone could take to heart as they plan how to tackle 2022?
Yeah. Well, I remember when we were at Black and Gold 2019, one of the other speakers was Jim Young, who's an investor out of Austin, Texas, a big developer, Sabo Development, and a good friend and mentor to me. And in his speech, he had said that if you can find the biggest problem, that's usually where there's the biggest opportunity. So as you're looking for deals, real estate, things like that, like what is the reason that somebody's not working with this property? What's the reason that no one's bought it yet? What's the reason that this price is so low? What's the reason that and trying to figure out what that is, and then reimagining what this could be if the problem is solved. So, for example, after I did this, I had every single real estate developer within a 50-minute radius call me to say, "Hey, can you help us with our office space, leasing it out and things like that?" And so it's just been really funny because they all looked at me as like I magically solved this problem of how to reinvent office space. I'm like, well, it's not like what you're thinking. This is still very hands-on. I'm very much a part of this. I'm here every day and I still spend time with people. And I did some of the work myself. Like I did a little boutique style rehab here. And but the idea is that that was the problem. Was everybody was saying, well, we kept lowering our prices of our office space, and I'm getting 3 times the price of standard commercial office space right here because of a community I built, because of some marketing strategy, because of, so I figured out a way to solve the problem. And I'm thinking, what's that in your area, or what's that in your region? What's the building that's, that is, that the location is terrible? One of my mentors in real estate said, if the location's absolutely terrible, put storage units there. He's like, that's what you do when you have an absolutely terrible location that nothing can go there. You put storage units there, because he's thinking, like, how do you always figure out a way to solve the problem in real estate? There's always a solution, and if you can figure that out, that's kind of the goal. So I found the niche with commercial office space. Every company is getting rid of their space, sending employees remote. Well, employees are sitting at home, they're working, crazy hours in their office den, and they hate being there. They want to get out. There's a lot of people, the most introverted people I know, still want to be able to get out and go somewhere. We've provided a space for that. So there's that around you. You could do the same thing with a small office building, make a little co-working space, and have a fun vibe with it.
And that's so good. That is so good, because I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, and I do remember Jim saying that he's a good friend and mentor as well. And really, I think part of his success has been able to identify opportunities that were problems that he's now been able to solve, just like you described. Interestingly, he and I actually have a deal together in Arlington, the DFW marketplace, 44-unit apartment complex right across the street from Cowboy Stadium that we're in the midst of refinancing. And we're post refinance, we're actually pivoting that to 100% short-term rental. And part of that is because there is a desire and a need for that type of product, given its proximity to the stadium, both Ranger Stadium as well as Cowboy Stadium, Six Flags. They say that in the short-term rental space, if you have 10 major events taking place over the course of the year, that you're in a good spot. Well, we did our analysis, and this has 564. So, I think it's going to be successful. But yeah, there was a need there. The building in Temple here that I just mentioned. In talking with the city manager and the head of their planning and development department, there are no overnight stay facilities. In other words, hotels or motels in downtown. So we're delivering that to the market in the form of short-term rentals. And so they're ecstatic about that. They initially wanted a boutique hotel, but when we explained our plan, it was very, very well received. Now we're talking about tax abatement. We're talking about different incentives and grants, and so a lot of different opportunities by finding challenges that need to be solved, by finding problems in the marketplace that need to be solved. I think the last thing I'll mention as it relates to this topic, and then we'll look to close out here, is I think you may have seen, AJ, the announcement by Samsung about their plant, their $17 billion plant, which is the largest in the U.S., going in here in a part of Austin that I'm familiar with. That's only 20 minutes from me. And so early half of last week, I went and driving for dollars, looking and driving around their downtown area. It's a small town, looking at these vacant buildings and just the proximity to that plant is going to transform that area. So now I'm looking and seeing, hey, can we buy this up and this and redevelop this? And it's just going to be so far different 2 years from now, even a year from now. But we want to be sort of on the front end of that. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, looking for opportunities, looking to solve people's problems that really can for sure bring.
Well, you just gave a pretty golden nugget too. A lot of times you just call up your city planning department, and they're going to give you the answers to the test. I mean, they'll say, right now, I sit on the business improvement district, and there's a list of saying, we want a bakery, we want this, we want this, we want this. And okay, so that's the goal. So can I find a baker tenant that wants to move into this area, and I find a building, boom, I make the synergy. I'm the middleman. And that's kind of that ground lease strategy, that build to suit strategy that you could easily do. And they'll give you the answers to the test. I mean, the opportunities are endless. The cost of labor and the cost of parts and the cost of materials right now. We're doing a real estate incubator right now where we're trying to figure out solutions to that using automated manufacturing, automated painting, automated 3D printing using concrete cinder blocks. I mean, there's a million different problems out there, like you and me, trying to rehab a building. Good luck getting labor and materials for a reasonable price. Somebody can figure out solutions to that: warehousing common stock, using automated manufacturing to do building, finding sourcing materials and supplies from better locations. There's a bazillion opportunities to make serious wealth in the entrepreneurial side of real estate or in the actual physical development of a property. And I think it's just about where you want to decide to zero in on.
Yeah, no, good stuff. So last question, and we'll look to wrap up. What's going to happen in the game today?
I'm saying it's going to be it's always a hard fought game today. It's always low scoring. It's always a tough fought. I think what we're going to see is I think we're going to see a solid 13-21 Army. Navy's going to have a touchdown and 2 field goals, and we're going to have 3 touchdowns with Army. That's my prediction. I'm on the record.
Oh, okay. All right. We've got you on record saying that. That's good. Now, I will tell you this. So we, at the Army Air Force game, we hosted a meetup event, which we do on a quarterly basis. And I think I exited at the beginning of the fourth quarter to go out to the parking lot to get set up. As I'm going out there, now, mind you, the score was like, okay, Army just needs 1 more touchdown and we're done, right? Something happened where by the time I walk out to our area, the score was tied up and it was going into overtime. And I had no idea what was going on. So yes, all of these games between the service academies are always hard fought.
Awesome game though, wasn't it?
Always close. And they're always low scoring. I doubt that we'll go to the air. Maybe we'll go once or twice to sort of shock the world, but always just nose to the grind, down the middle, some options, a little bit of trickery if we need it. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch, and very, very exciting times. Man, I'm so grateful that you joined us. I really am. You've got so much to offer, so much value here, AJ, and kudos to what you and Marissa are doing. Congrats on the baby again, by the way. And just I know how fun that is. So keep enjoying that and keeping your priorities straight. I have to check myself at times to make sure I'm doing that, and I know that you're good about that. So.
Well, thank you so much for giving the opportunity to talk to some of your folks, and if you have any questions or anything, your members, your mastermind, I'm always easy, a phone call away. Feel free to shoot me a note, a text. I'm so grateful for you giving me the chance to speak to some of you guys too, and being even asked is really a pleasure. Thank you.
AJ, on that, you're absolutely welcome. On that, I had on the screen or in my presentation your contact information, but what is the best way for folks to reach out to you?
I'll pull it up while I got you here. So you can just reach out to me any of these platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, aaronjarmstrong.com. And if you fill out any of the forms or any of the messengers on any of those platforms, it'll get to me eventually. And I'm trying to be pretty responsive on it. So
cool, very cool. Well, hey, thanks for that. Thanks so much for everybody who dialed in today, and anybody who listens to this after the fact. If you have questions about the mastermind, please contact me or send a message to info@redeeminvestments.com or go to our website, redeeminvestments.com/mastermind is where you'll find information about that. And again, if you need to get a hold of AJ or want to get in touch with him, please reach out to him as well. Again, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who joined. God bless you guys. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.